some water now.
Cruising by like a summer night. In the back of my mind, I see my past life, but I dip fast, cause it ain't gon' hold me back. I got the slick pass. I see my last life dipping on the right side of me, so I catch the beat, swiftly dip out my mind. It's pixies inside my life, and they keep twisting up my heart and mind, so I decide to take a new route of mine. Hit a left turn, hit a right turn, shit, I'm out my mind. But I'm not playing and I'm not rhyming, I'm just dying fine. Sitting pretty in my ride, smoking heavy for the time being, but my life can't load slow. I can't stop this rhythm, pop this Smith when I send them. I lose some isms, lose some sweat inside this sweater, cause it's hot as fuck today. I can't seem to find my way out of my shell, but I'm grinding higher, moving flyers, taping them against the wall until rappers retire, cause I'm cool like a fan blowing through ever seeing mans. Fortune tellers foretold me that I would have the plan, cracked it out before I was a little one, blowing air, looking into skies. I know I feel some of my soul drip on the beat as I slide past, but it ain't nothing that I need into the next life, so I'ma just laugh and crash on the couch before they leave me out the ring without a fucking ounce of dreams. I'm counting all these fucking things until I'm out of sense, cause I ain't got nothing else I can say. I'm fucking I just want to make it to those horns came in. This is the best part.
That was really good.
That was cool, man.
Welcome to Vine Tree Radio. It's your boy Wes here chilling with
Matty Wowie. How's it going?
You know we got a guest. Introduce yourself.
My name is Ben Marino, composer with Parma Recordings and Navona Records.
And welcome to Vine Tree Radio.
Man.
Welcome. Thank you, guys.
Glad to have you here. It's a great day right now. You know, this is an interesting podcast today because we've had a lot of different guests, but today we get to have a guest that I got to meet through Mauricio today.
Yes, sir. This was a friend of mine that we got to meet together through work. We not only through work, but we were also in school together.
Right. Audio classes.
Audio classes. You were in one of my early classes when I was barely like getting into the whole music production game. So like, you were one of the people that I've probably spent the most like talking about like when it comes to like audio engineering and stuff like that. Troubleshooting, exactly.
Yeah.
Like that a person that like I remember back in spending the days in the back office with like just going back and forth talking about like all about engineering and production and like all these different stories, and like, man, we just used to have such good conversations back then that I knew we were going to have such great conversations today. Yeah. So I'm excited to have you here.
No, thanks for having me. No, I jumped at the opportunity and we used to talk about it, and here it is. So we're going to get this podcast thing going, and I said, call me when my time's up. So here it is.
Hell yeah.
Excited.
Hell yeah. Well, I guess part of this, we kind of like talked a little bit of how we met, but also one part of how we met was how I guess you kind of got introduced to Wesley, like in a way that you guys didn't meet, but you guys met in a sense.
Like you met him around the time when we started working? Was it when you were making What's Happening, or was this like, were you working at your job there when we met at COC?
Yes.
Oh.
I might have gotten the job.
You might have still been working at the other spot with the homies, huh?
I forgot about that. But it would have been like...
It was right when you were leaving there, starting to work at the Marriott then, huh? Or we could bleep it out if you don't want to say the Marriott. I just forgot. I wasn't before.
But it was right around that time. I can't remember, honestly, if like I had already started... I don't think for that first... Because I know we were probably in my second class. We were in...
It was sound editing with Amador, and it was probably spring, I'm going to say, of 19. I think was our first class.
Spring of 19, so I think...
Or fall of 18, it was one of the two.
Okay, so I think by that point, we had already started on... Because you and I made Metamorphosis, I want to say, in like the fall of the year prior.
Oh, because it was that class,
exactly.
That semester.
Exactly, so I think...
Gotcha.
Because of that, we were probably starting already a little bit, and then I switched into that other into bartending.
So
there,
pretty much this is within a couple months, the same months time you would say.
Yeah, like I'd say within a few months, exactly. Within a few months, I met you guys both, and like, it was crazy because we ended up working on a song together, but it was a song that neither of you guys had, I think, actually met each other.
I just got his vocal. That was it. It was a stripped down. It was The Day I Died, I think.
Yeah.
And it was just the vocal, and Mauricio gave it to me, and he's like, see what you come up with. He's had this kind of piano idea, and I ended up doing something else and had like this kind of a string arrangement that Mauricio took the arrangement and produced it further, and then that made it onto that track. That's what I think was our collective work.
Yeah.
That was cool. It was
fun.
The way you produced the strings, it had like kind of like this kind of wavy in and out kind of breathing.
Well,
element.
you actually jogged my memory. I didn't realize that song, and I remember now that was probably maybe one of the third songs we worked on, huh? I forgot that was because it's the outro of like the album. That's why it threw me off. I'm like, but that actually was like maybe like one of our third songs ever making together. Now I think about it, I think I just knew that would be the outro, and we were working on an outro.
Yeah, and it was on top of that though. On top of being one of the, it's funny because there's certain songs that I feel like we've made that pardon me. I feel like there's certain songs that we've made that like sometimes like are made in like a day, and like what it is like almost damn near what it is till then. Like it may be just like a couple little tweaks here and there. It's defined, right? Yeah. And then there's other songs that we've had that will take like months to like develop into like what it is in after like so many different iterations and so many different like trials and tribulations with it, of like just kind of like trying to figure out what's the best way for it. And The Day I Died was one of those songs. Was one that we started very early, but it was actually one of the last ones that it was, I think, probably the second to last one we finished for the actual album.
Why it's confusing, because I remember working on those parts you sent, and like you sending it to me and being like, oh, did you like this? That was like ending album. That was still at the ending time, but I guess maybe the lyrics, I guess I wrote them.
It was early on. Yeah. Because there was honestly...
Oh, because at like the point in time, talk about that, the versions of the beat, right?
Exactly.
Because there was rain in the beat, right?
Exactly.
I always forget that.
There was a bleep, too. There was like something that was bleeping in the beginning. Do you guys remember that?
Like the heartbeat.
It was a heartbeat, yeah, that's what it was, yeah. I always remember that, too. I was like, is that a metronome? Like, what
did you think of like that piece of music? Like when you first heard it, like how did it make you feel? Like musically, even like.
I always kind of like to paint pictures, so like I got that, and I just had this whole like image of like I'm gonna produce this thing. So like for me, it was easy to build around. I thought it was pretty cool. I was moved by it.
Gosh, it's cool.
And I gave it to Marino, and he's like, "We're gonna tone it down. We've got some other ideas," and it was cool. You know, it was like one of my first experiences working with like a producer. Like another producer, and you know, zipping things or files and getting them back and forth. But I was moved by it. You know, I got on the piano and I was like, hey, strip it down. And yeah, it was kind of minimalist, but it was great.
It was fun. It was, you provided exactly what it needed for it, man. Like I felt like there was so many. Prior to when I started to reach out to you for it, I had honestly given it like I don't know how many goes on the piano and on like the MIDI keyboard, just trying to figure out like different progressions, different like solos on it, different things. There was certain things that sounded okay, but nothing sounded just like 100% right in a certain sense. And like this was also very early on in my like career, so I was just like I just had no experience with that, and like you were and you still are one of like the greatest piano players I've met.
Thanks,
you
man.
know, man. Like,
I appreciate that.
I know that you're like nice with this shit, man.
Thank you.
And so like with that, like I knew that like when I needed to reach out to someone for that, like I knew I needed to come to you.
Yeah.
And so like
anytime
when it came to that, and you, like I said, you delivered exactly what it needed for me, because like you gave me the progression that I needed. You know what I mean? Because I remember you gave me the MIDI files, and you gave me the other, like, the sounds that came with the MIDI files. And I liked the sounds that came with it, but what I loved more was the MIDI itself, the progression, exactly.
Right?
Because
I think it was like in something like an A minor or an E minor. It was like in a minor, but it modulated at times to kind of a major, but went back. So
exactly,
you think about his lyrics. It's the day he died. It can't be too. It's got a somber tone to it.
I like that you described that though, like how like it kind of goes up at times and changes down,
and then it goes back down, right?
Because there's a lot of like certain flows I hear or music you hit like that. I've noticed that where, because you do a lot of solos, you know what I'm saying, and in the solos a lot of times to feel the feeling in it, the way like in my freestyles, it's like those moments of just like, you know what I mean, kind of catching a vibe and then just being like, all right, take it really high and then take it really low, like, and then like see what that does to like the feeling of things. I don't know what you know what I mean?
I feel you. It was in that exactly like that tension that you're saying.
It was kind of like a ballad almost. Like that was the other way I was kind of looking, even though he wasn't like singing, but there is like the rhythmicness, the rhythmic pattern he had in his delivery, and the way the piano was kind of bouncing. It reminded me of a ballad almost.
Definitely a lot more spoken word than like I've done, and I really enjoy spoken word stuff. I think at that time, since I had taken a break on music, I was trying to figure out how I could just start a new thing, and that was something I felt like I had done in the past, if you will, and I was kind of just like, I should incorporate that in something that I'm doing. And speaking of that, I haven't pulled them up, but like I was speaking to him, I found old songs, and something old that I found I used to do is like I forgot that I used to do that. Like,
little gem.
I used to do like I had something called acapellas, and like when I was in high school and made like mixtapes, and at the end I did that then, like the end of the tape. I was gonna do acapellas. I did acapellas 1, and then later on when I like was making other stuff with other people, I just did acapellas 2. And it was like, it was on SoundCloud, but I remember even then I just knew that like that was something I had a love for, so it was like important to incorporate in whenever I make music, to just be like, just do a song where it's like not necessarily like more of a ballad, if you will, just talking like.
Oh yeah, that's dope. That was a great song. I think like on top of the music lyrically, like it was, like you said, is the spoken word, on top of the style, the delivery, like what the context was about, I think was one of those like really deep songs that like it was something that we dived into something that I feel like, whilst a lot of the other songs in the album as well were like diving into very personal things as well for you and like very deep things, I feel like that song was like one of those. It was like,
yeah, it was definitely conceptually like the idea of like, we talked about it a little bit with another friend, like 'cause we talked about the idea of just making songs like this, like about your death. And I felt like for me it was just the idea of kind of conceptualizing it, but also our album being about like rebirth in itself, and like me becoming the new in what I'm doing. So I felt like in that sense it was like, why not get meta and kind of just think about like, I feel like from my perspective it was like, who would be there at your funeral and how would it go?
That's the way I always kind of heard. I kind of thought about it. It's like you're watching your funeral. That's what I always kind of.
That was kind of the lens, like how I looked at it, like, because it was kind of almost like that was just like the different thought on it. I'm just like, wow, like when you die, like a lot of different things could happen, this and that happen, but the one thing that is gonna happen is like people are gonna feel a certain way about it, or like something like that is gonna, And I just kind of pondered on that for a little bit, like how would that go, like.
And that was the last track of that album?
Second to
last track. Nice.
Because that was kind of like the finale, and then we did something that was like, we was more a lead into what we were going to be doing after that.
Which was?
New Beginning.
Cool. I like Metamorphosis.
Yes.
I think that was one of the first tracks. Maybe
that was our very first track that we ever made.
Okay, that might have been one of the first ones you may have showed me. Well, you showed me a lot, so I have to go back and figure that out.
I think you were one of the few folks that I showed, like that I know Wes showed.
I'm curious, what was some of the first stuff you showed him, like of yours?
I would just show him some, like, I'm kind of a sample based kind of composer, so a lot of instrumental stuff, ideas of instrumentation, but kind of half baked stuff a lot. But we would talk a lot about it's like technique a lot. A lot of technique on how to use samples and Pro Tools versus Logic, and I'd put something on YouTube and Reese will be like, that's kind of muddy, but it would be like valuable tools. I'd be like, oh well, how do you fix that? And maybe give me another avenue, another route. So it'll be like a lot of like my compositional ideas. That's kind of what I work with. So I bounce a lot of stuff off him constantly. Trailer kind of stuff, I'm interning at this trailer house at this time called Ghost Rider Music, and I'm trying to fit into that, and I'm not really fitting into that, but I'm kind of working in that area. So that was kind of like the genre of stuff I show him.
I want to touch on both those things a little bit, because I mean the genre, like the music that you were playing, I always loved it, man, because, and I feel like I always told you this, because and it is always true, that when I listen to your music, like I see a story with it.
Sure.
Like there's always something, like I can always feel the cinematicness that comes with it, because you make it like to set the vibe, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? And like that's what it is about, and like it's about setting, like that's what music is as a whole, right?
Music for media, whatever that media may be, video game trailer, film.
Yeah. So it was like, that was always something that I loved, listening to everything that you would show me on that end.
Thanks,
because,
man.
Like it was just always cool. It was always like, I always like could visualize something with it, and I think that's something that not a lot of music nowadays like everything kind of visualizes it with something, but I feel like, and maybe this is just what we've been conditioned into a certain point. I don't know, and we can kind of talk about this because when I think of like certain popular music or like say like radio tracks, you know what I mean, like it's like even like visually, like you think like music video, you know what I mean, you think like different things that go on, like different popular trends in a certain things, right? Dancing,
Party at the beach,
right? You know what I mean, like, and then you have like music for like film and TV, where like the music is synonymous with vibes in a certain sense, like where you listen to it and it paints like that picture, you know what I mean? And like, and they say, I've heard a lot of different directors say that like the music will make up more of the scene than the act, than like the visual does, you know what I mean? Because like it creates like 80% of the emotion or something like that, because it just drives it, you know what I mean? And so like with that, it was always, because you always focused on that kind of like that style of music, it was always amazing to see the stories that you would build with it, because
just in your imagination.
Exactly. Because you focus on building like the ambiance with it and building that vibe. And with that, I want to talk about like how it was the experience you were saying at Ghost Rider, working under like a publishing house. Is it publishing house?
Yeah.
And like what it was like there, because trying to describe that experience, I guess. Wow,
it was real daunting first, because they were like real professionals, and we were kind of learning, at least I was kind of at that point where I'm learning how to produce music and production music. Wasn't really familiar with it, so sitting down with the producers and composers, I was really intimidated. So first off, I had to get over that hurdle. But they would get the brief, and then we'd go into the like studio with like the brief on the wall, and super professional. They had like big speakers and like the panels that are bouncing the sound the right way. And his name was Austin. Can I say his name?
Yeah,
his name was Austin Seltzer. He was like the main producer that I got to see work, and he would bring up some artwork to get himself inspired. And he was slick, man. He would get right into it and just power right through it, and within an hour or 2 hours he'd have like a killer track together. The family friend I had, his name was Travis Machad. He was like I think he was like the CEO or kind of half business partner with the other guy named Chris Bragg. He'd come in and say, like this, don't like that, and let's change this. Or he'd come in and be like, that's awesome, send it to me. And then they would be turning it around to the studio to get the green light or not. There was another guy named Brian Nguyen who was also in there as well, and producing and composing stuff. And man, they were just so great on the programs, and talented musicians, but like just had every facet of it down. So I was like, wow, this is what it's like to be a real producer. And they're under time crunches, so it's like, we need to get this done now. And to watch them work under that time frame was very impressive.
I'm curious to know like what like how'd you get to that point?
Like family friend.
Because I remember how you were explaining how you said you were kind of like nervous to be in that position. So was that like your first instance in being in that position, or did you already have like experience kind of like leading up to this, like where you were like, this is the next step?
Grew up in music, you know, studied piano at a very young age, and was always just kind of like a piano player, and learning guitar and dabbling and like writing songs, that sort of thing, and went back to COC, got into the sound arts program, and we're doing a lot of music to media, like doing trailers and, you know, composing music to trailers. And so I would kind of like rip a trailer that I thought was cool and make my own music to it, put it out on Facebook just for my friends and family. And Travis Mashad, who was, you know, half of the Ghostwriter team, said, hey man, why don't you come in and just check out what we do and how we really do this, because they make sound design and music for film trailers. And it was like perfect timing, because I was working on the sound arts degree and you needed an internship credit. So I was like, okay, I'll go in there and just throw it out there, say, hey man, can I do my internship here and get credit for it? And I was really hoping he'd say yeah. And he said, yeah man, we're here all the time. So I was there for like probably 3 months maybe, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for like 2 or 3 hours, and got to see a lot of how they're writing music. But then I would go into the office and watch how the business end would work, of how they were getting the briefs, and okay, and that didn't work. Let's go back to the production studio room and figure out how we need to change this because it's not tense enough, or the drums are too much, or whatever it may be. So I didn't know exactly where I wanted to land in music, but I figured, you know, I do want to be a composer. Maybe I want to be a producer too. I don't know. Maybe both.
When I was at COC, I felt like they had like a good funneling program to the film industry from whatever like I did dabble into it. Because I remember taking a screenwriting class once, and the screenwriting professor was really cool, bro. Like he made like, shout out to the movie Robots. He made that movie
was
Robots.
It Ron Mita?
Yeah, I believe so, right?
Yeah.
And he really was like, he was really helping me, bro. And he really was telling other people, like, email me, like, they're about to make this a degree, like, if you're really good at this, like. And I remember telling you, and I met another film, a guy who worked on us in one of our videos in that first album too, in that class.
I took that class.
Right.
I didn't take him, but I know who he is. I took it for the sound arts.
Yeah, and I remember just feeling like, man, they got a good program here on like funneling. Like, he sold me on it for sure. I was like, man, this is cool.
What happened next for me is I worked on a small short film for a guy named Steven, who is working at the hotel with us now. Yeah, he's a cool guy. But he was doing this short, came into one of the audio classes and said, hey, I need a composer who wants to do it. And I emailed him right away and said, man, I'd love to do it. And it was called Burbank Burglary. He got it into the LA Independent Short Film Festival. Seriously? Yeah, made like a second like viewing. Like, it was really cool. So I was like, yeah, man, I want to be a film composer. I want to do it all. Yeah.
And at the same time, I was learning a little bit about it from Mauricio, because Mauricio was telling me he was in a class, the TV and film class, and that was a little bit my first experience with that, working on working on that and Metamorphosis, like how you kind of inputted those, like you had the assignment to input those sounds in it. And I remember going to the actual class to record like the verse for Metamorphosis and like CLC, and then seeing the other people like in the room.
Not for Metamorphosis.
Was it? Yeah, I remember it.
No, you recorded Metamorphosis.
Oh, well, I tried to, and then it didn't work. I still came though, because I remember 100% I came to the class and we recorded on like Pro Tools on this big computer.
I think we did do that, but
then it didn't work.
Song.
No, that was our first song ever, because that was my first time ever coming to there. I just remember it, like you had that beat up and everything. I just remember actually it not like something happening in the class. Like, now you're remembering like something happened with them, and then we were just like, nah, like we didn't finish it or we didn't like it, like, because we didn't have no other songs at that time when I came to that class.
Maybe.
I just know like we finished Metamorphosis at the homies room, but I know that like at that time that was the song I think I came to record. Cause I only came to the classroom like one time ever.
I know nothing.
Like, guys, we're trying to record here. Everyone quiet in the class. He's picking up all the extra mic noise.
Yeah, like
because I've seen that there. Because I've been there at weird hours. I used to be before everything happened, and like people would come in and trying to use the Scarlett and the mics, and
yeah, like we were on a move like that one day. Like we went in there and like tried it, and I think like we asked some couple questions or something, and I think maybe I had to go or something happened, and then we were just like, all right, like.
I feel like a big part of it was, one, me still learning how to use the console, and like also, dude, like it's crazy how many consoles and stuff just aren't just like straight up plug and plays. Like you really need like, you know what I mean?
That's what it was. That's what it was. We used the one that was just randomly like not just a random accessible one, and then the random
Was
like
it good
really
to go, or was
accessible
there like
one.
problems with the mic?
It was
It was like an old interface that it was plugged
okay.
into, if I remember correctly. And I think the one where it was regular, like with the Focusrite, someone was just using. It was just like they were just using it at the time. Like they had them.
because like those were the easy finesse, but like to use like the big consoles there, sometimes it was like it just wouldn't connect like
Yeah, that's what
input
it was.
wise because like you're
Kills the creativity.
it
Just
does,
kills
man.
it.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
That's the worst.
Oh man.
That's what my logic teacher in this class is stressing right now, is just making sure like your equipment is like pristine and always ready to go. Everything's plugged in right, so when that creative spark is there, let's just press play and let's make it happen, rather than like, okay, what are we plugged into? What are we not plugged into? More often, that's the problem, is something's not plugged in right, and you got to search it out and figure it out. But
It's like something interesting you experienced or you didn't expect in the TV, like and movie industry. Like when you got into it, like what was something about it like that you're like you didn't like in a good or positive way too, where it's just like you didn't like know this about it and you got in and you're like, okay, this is something interesting.
I haven't gotten into it too deep yet, but the Ghost Rider stuff.
Yeah, the Ghost Rider
stuff. Let's say, I would say the time that they're under, like the pressure. Like I knew it's a pressure gig, but that made it seem even more stressful. Like
seeing the limits.
The limits, like we've got to do this like now. Like they'd be up all night long, and then I would get there first thing in the morning, but they're already there because they've been up because they're dealing with people from all over the world. So it's not 9 to 5 at all. And I never thought it would be, but that confirmed that it's not
it was
9
just
to 5.
the reality of like, wow, this is like 24.
Yeah.
What's like the rough like time limits that they would give you guys?
Oof.
Like 24 hours, 48 hours.
It seemed like
More.
8 hours maybe. Like
Hey,
by the end
jeez.
of the day, maybe they'd have to have in the queue to get the approval. And they want to get it in before, because they're shopping at other trailer houses too, of course. Trying to remember some of the other places that were like their competition, but they were at that time they were like, you could tell they were on top, and they probably got preferential looks because they were they had X-Men, all the Marvel movies, they'd done Dunkirk, they did some pretty big campaigns. Aquaman was a big one that they got.
Was there any that you got to work on that you were specifically excited about yourself?
I
that
never
you were
really
lucky
got to work on one. I got
Okay.
to kind of like sit in the back and watch. You know, I'm the intern. You know,
Got you.
I'm the intern, so I'm just watching. What was cool that they were working on? They got Dune.
Dude,
They didn't
that's
get
nice.
it, but this is how like far in advance. This was like summer of 19, and they had like. I was just leaving. I was just about to wrap up the internship, and they got like the brief for Dune, and Austin had this vocal, and it was just this girl kind of panting. She was just kind of breathing like, so they just had that little clip, and he made that this huge like epic sci-fi metal clanking, strings going crazy, like trailer banger, if you will, just from that little sample. And I was like, I came in the next day and he played it for me. I was like, wow, it was phenomenal. It's phenomenal. They just took something so small and like turned it into this big production. That was impressive. Like I said, just really impressive guys. Yeah.
And this is before you went to Berkeley school?
No, I went to Berkeley in
Oh.
Berkeley College of Music in Boston in 2001, 2002.
Whoa.
So yeah, I'm a little
What was that
older.
like?
Yeah, that was a trip too. That was also just, I thought I was a good pianist, and I got there and I was like, wow, I got a lot of work to do. There's like phenoms. I had a roommate that had perfect pitch, which was crazy. Like I could turn his back to the piano and play like a cluster of notes, and he could pick it out without obviously looking. He could say, oh, C sharp, F, E, G on your left hand, then D, F, E, B flat on your right hand. I'd be like, what? How does he do that? So yeah, just some gifted kids. Just
So that's like one of the most like prestigious like
yeah.
music
It's
schools,
one.
right?
It's one of the best like performing arts school, like jazz, modern songwriting, and I was a piano principal and composition major. So I was that's where a lot of the compositional stuff kind of started.
So your tests and stuff were piano based.
Yeah, we wouldn't really have so much like written tests. Like we'd have like theory and harmony classes, which would be like written, but we had like sight singing, like the do re mi fa sol la ti do. I had a ensemble class where I was a piano player in the ensemble with like, saxophone, horns, and bass and all that stuff, drums. And then I had a one-on-one piano teacher where we were like, I was learning like Chopin pieces and jazz standards, that sort of thing. So that was kind of the curriculum.
It's nice.
A little music technology was coming up at that time. So a lot of...
When I was young, I feel like I saw myself just going directly that route. Like just only piano. Mainly, like even though like before I thought about doing other music, because like you, I took lessons when I was young, but at the time I was mostly into sports, so like I just only took piano lessons. So that's the only thing I kind of in music was like, all right, like I could see, you know what I mean? Like I kind of took serious, if you will.
I got into the guitar for a little bit too. Cool. Yeah, like piano was like I had a weekly piano lesson growing up, and then about like 15, I was like, you're looking at your bands that you like Radiohead, and like, oh, I want to play guitar too. So then got into that pretty heavy for a while. But the piano's great because it's linear, and when you're composing music, it's all there. Some people might get overwhelmed, but it's really just 12 tones. It's the same 12 tones repeating octave over octave. So if you look at it that way, it kind of simplifies the process. But when you're writing music, piano is the way to go, theory-wise.
When you're with like all these like talented and gifted folks that you're surrounded by, does that like have you kind of like up your game in a certain sense? Like you're just like,
I gotta practice.
Yeah.
They had these little rooms that you go in. They had like a hallway of like kind of like COC, like piano rooms, and it's like I gotta get my scales down. I gotta know my chords. I need to know how to improvise. I think in those settings is like one of the stronger things you need to know how to do, because that's what like jazz music is improvisation. And do you know your scales? Do you know where to fit in that certain scale? Do you even know where we're at, like rhythmically, and what chords we're using? So as a piano player, you got to be all over that and learn how to vamp, tone it down a little bit, and then know when it's your time to shine. So as a piano player, you got a lot of responsibilities. I think just like a drummer too, because it's all percussive, those instruments,
Mm-hmm. Did you ever play in a band at all?
I had friends that we would like dabble, but nothing ever too serious. Like to us it was serious, but we would never like play shows.
Did you ever play in a big band, like an orchestra?
Never played in an orchestra, but at Berkeley I played in smaller ensembles, like jazz ensembles, like upright bass, you got like a guitar player, piano player, maybe a drummer. That was always pretty cool. Maybe someone on horns. That would be kind of a cool added to the mix.
Do they have like competitions there, like for different positions and stuff?
I think like the more how can I say this? Like the more advanced students might be able to get into some type of competitions, like through their teacher, like a film like Whiplash.
Yeah.
You guys seen that film? Where there's like a jazz competition? I never did anything like that because I was like a first year student there. But I'm sure as you get up, you could get into those if you wanted to. Yeah.
Were there teachers like the Whiplash
teacher? Like the Whiplash guy? No, but not at Berkeley. No, everyone was pretty cool.
Yeah, man,
I didn't. Yeah, thank goodness I didn't encounter that guy. That guy was scared the crap out of me. Though I did have an accordion teacher way back in the day who had this, which is funny because it was right off of Camp Plenty. You know where Camp Plenty is?
Yeah.
Back in the day, they used to have a studio. There was an accordion place, and the guy would say, "Get it right or spend the night."
What?
Yeah, get it right or spend the night. That was one of his like terms. Is I always remember telling my mom, like, I gotta spend the night if I don't get it right. So I'd be like on my bed with the accordion. I was good, man. I was down with the accordion too. That was my first instrument.
Oh shit.
That was my first instrument. Door-to-door guy going through Santa Clarita selling accordion lessons and accordions. And I must have been like 6 or 7, young. And I guess my dad told me, he's like, you just had to have it. And so I was like, wow, dude, really? And he's like, so we bought it for you, bought lessons. And I would go to competitions there. I would take it to like 2nd grade show and tell. Be on the chair in front of everybody, playing polka. Yeah, it was kind of lame.
I don't have my mic when I was
Do you still
young.
have one?
Yeah, I still have it. My dad
Nice.
actually just gave it to me the other day. I was hanging out with him, and he's like, by the way, I got your accordion.
That's
So
cool.
I have it, have not opened it up. But like a couple years later, my parents bought a piano, and that's when me and my sister started playing.
Yeah.
And I kind of ditched the accordion, and after the piano, went to the guitar. But I always stuck with the piano.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's accordion.
I have a harmonica. I need to bust out.
You need a
again.
harmonica?
I have one. I still have it. It's my old harmonica. I had it when I was a kid.
Yeah,
It's like when we passed it down, like from family.
Right.
And like I when I was a kid though, I was really on it. Like I don't know why. Like that was just the main thing. Maybe because you could just use it easily. Like you could just blow into
bring it
it.
back.
Yeah.
One of your recordings.
I know, huh?
Yeah.
Right? Like I could see a freestyle now, just like
You can back and forth, just like a singer. You know, you got it.
Yeah.
2 little verses. You know.
Oh, yeah. That'd be sick. Oh man. So, I mean, one thing I also wanted to talk to you about was like in recording the music that you do. Like, can you talk about the process that goes into making the songs?
So like the MIDI bass stuff, or like the Parma recording stuff.
I guess both.
Either
Break
one.
it down for us.
Either one. Okay, so it could go one of 2 ways. The stuff I've done with Parma actually all started in a program called Sibelius, which is a notation program where I have to notate, each instrument of the orchestra, notate each line, each melody, each counter melody, each rhythmic pattern, whatever it may be. So I do that in Sibelius, note by note by note, to make the score. And then I take the MIDI information, move it into a DAW like Logic, and then dress it up with like all the amazing samples I have from like Spitfire Audio and Orchestral Tools, Metropolis.
And what
Arc.
is Parma?
Parma Recordings. That's the record company.
That's the record company.
That's the music production company.
Got you.
Parma Recordings. And the label that my music's on is Navona Records.
So you're saying like when you're working with them, that's like your process.
Yeah. So the two pieces that I got contracted with them, I started it in Sibelius, wrote it all out there, and then moved it into Logic, made a mock-up, sent the score, sent the mock-up to kind of get the process rolling, to say either yes, we want to do this, or no, we don't. Now the other stuff, like the MIDI bass stuff, that's just me on the keyboard. Kind of just vamping, just
having fun.
So you get a pattern or an ostinato that you're feeling, and then you just layer, right? Just layers.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's hard.
That's kind of like it. I could go either way. Those are the 2 paths.
Okay. And I guess just to kind of make like the further distinction as to why like the other one is because for the Parma one is you have to go through Sibelius and the Logic because you have to make, like you said, you're writing out the score to it so that it can be recorded
so
live.
It can be played by real musicians. Exactly. So that's where it gets more technical, is I have to, and I think about this stuff like all day. Like I'm thinking about like maybe a string idea I have to figure out. I start counting in my head, is it in 4/4, is it in 6/8, what's the time signature, is there ties, what's the note values? Like I have to have this all pre-planned so it looks organized, so when it finally does get in front of a musician, they're able to legibly see it, and it needs to line up with all the other instruments to produce the effect I'm going for. So if you do that in MIDI sometimes, and I'm not a big fan of quantizing stuff.
Me neither.
So you try and get it to, like maybe in the score editor, to spit out the score, it's not gonna be looking right. And it's gonna take a lot of work to correct that. So when you eventually do get it in front of a musician, they're gonna be, what is this guy thinking? Like, this is not right. So I start in Sibelius, make sure everything is super even, and it's legible. And it makes a really killer score. The PDF looks like sharp, and I think it's awesome. I think it's the best notation program out there, Sibelius.
Oh,
yeah.
And that's out to them, because I've never heard of it, but I feel like that's probably are they like a big figure within that world then, right?
Yeah, like for orchestration.
They're like the one.
Yeah, for like big film composers or any type of composer, Sibelius notation. There's other ones, like I think it's called Finale, and there's a couple other knockoffs, but in my opinion, the functionality with Sibelius is like top notch. There's little bugs, just like in any program. There's bugs you got to get around, and you wish like, oh man, I wish this rewire mode worked better, or I wish I could get my real samples, into Sibelius. And I'm sure there's a way to do it. I just don't know how, so I don't have to go all the way back to the DAW. But that's part of the fun. Get it into the DAW, and you have all the MIDI information. You play it with the Logic stuff. It might sound like Super Mario Brothers. you know, but then you get the cool samples you have, and then you're like, okay, this is starting to sound like what I thought I had in my head. And now you're like, I'm onto something. Yeah.
I want to kind of touch upon your like sample collection, because I know you've got like a pretty extensive one, and like it's a good one too.
Yeah, Spitfire Audio. They're like I used to always come up to you like, bro, check out this new sample. I think I'm gonna buy it, man. Like, this library's killer. So, man, I probably got maybe 12 libraries. I've thousands of dollars I've spent on Spitfire. I couldn't go through every single one, but their flagship is the Albion. So they have like Albion 1, Albion 2, Albion 3. Each one has a different, like, I think Albion 2 was like more darker,
like
lower
themes
end.
to them.
Yeah, like different vibes or like sounds. So like, I think it was Albion 2. I want to say, I think they're retiring that one. Was more of like the Hans Zimmer, low brass, the Brahms, that kind of stuff, where you're like very trailer ready. The Albion 1 is like got everything under the sun you could think of, and you know they still put that one up front. And if you have that, you could pretty much score a film with that. You know, you got to learn the tricks of reverb and compression and all that, but it gets the job done. But I'm moving more towards Orchestral Tools. They're a German-based company. Spitfire is English. Orchestral Tools and their Metropolis Arc series is really good too. It's a little bit more up front. That I've noticed, if that makes any sense. You know, when you hear a sample, sometimes it could sound like it's got like a direction to it. Like some are more up in your face and some are more like back and warmer. I find that Orchestral Tools are a little bit more up front. That's why I seem to like them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you say you keep them, how do you say, like, organized, if you will? I feel like that's my question with people that have like a big bank of samples. Like, do they have them in the sense like where these are these type of samples, or do you label them yourselves, or do you kind of go by like the themes that they set, if you will, like where it's like these are the, like, I go into this pack because this is like their darker version of this, or do you have like, do you repurpose them in your own compiles?
No, I don't repurpose them. No, that's a good question. Okay. No, the way once I download them and they're in my DAW, it's a good job of it's already organized for me.
Gotcha.
So I just kind of know.
Some people put all their kicks in one place. I've seen that. Like, they'll put all the, like, you know, this snares in one area, and then
it's actually kind of smart because you don't have to sift through a bunch of stuff. Yeah, like I do quite a bit of sifting.
But I wonder if, like, even if they do that, it's like, can they remember all the ones they have? I feel like that's a better way to remember all the stuff you have, though.
Gives them more organization.
Another thing, though, we've always talked about this, is like just making your own samples.
Yeah,
I've never done that, but like.
You've kind of, I mean, when you were saying like with the MIDI stuff.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like,
I guess it is.
That's pretty much, you know?
But we're not making the actual, like, you know, when the Spitfire audio guys do it, they're like...
recording the live audio.
The live audio. Yeah, okay, we're going to hit middle C with this one articulation. Okay, now we're going to do a long middle C. You know, whatever it may be. So I've ever thought about doing something like that. That's like next level stuff.
That is some next level.
You know, sample your piano. Right? That would be cool.
One of the artists I really like, she has a song like that. She's a guitarist. She has a song saying like, she sings like, oh, I think she says like Fouché is just like I got rich off a sample, right? Or like her first song. I feel like she's exaggerating, but what she's trying to say is like guitar licks, which they show in like the show Euphoria, which is funny. Like they show this process because they have Dominic Feiken there as a guitarist, but he doesn't play him, but he's a kid, and what he does like to make money on the side is make samples,
licks, riffs.
And I remember him saying that, and I remember just her saying the song, and I'm like, wow, this is a world, like this is a thing.
That's a total thing. I think the company's called Splice. You ever heard of them?
Heard of Splice, yeah.
I have another friend who I've just recently met who does that, and he was like, hey man, if you ever have some, you know, maybe you have something you want to give to me, throw it my way, maybe I could do something with it. So I haven't yet, but I was like, I'll take you up on that.
Did you ever think of doing that? Like,
yeah, you should.
Making like a cool ass sample pack or selling it, some cool shit.
You probably could, man. You probably got a lot of stuff to use.
Cause you're always making them samples. Like you're always on the idea of like, I want to create this sample, You ever thought of making like a signature one?
I would do it for my, I don't know. I mean, maybe I would do it for like, I would give it away or something like that one day. That'd be cool.
I feel like with
I feel like if
kind of more easier to think about sometimes with live instruments. I feel like it's hard for me to think about with the other stuff, but I feel like it would work the same. I just feel like, I guess maybe because people are always looking for like little like guitar loops or drum loops, they're just more common to look for.
It is one thing that's like, I've given it thought because I've had a couple folks like ask me about it, and like, it's one of those things where like, I could, but I've never given it too much thought on that end. I don't know. It's a possibility. Whenever it's crossed my mind, initially it's always kind of been like, I'd want to use it for like personal use.
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily like fully against.
It's just
like,
you don't see yourself not making a song with it whenever you've done it. Like
exactly,
you've done it, you've been like,
that's
alright.
That's the way I've looked at everything. Because the way I said like with the MIDI thing, and because like, and I get it, because what you're saying is I like more is you're saying like the actual like live recording of stuff, and I like that aspect to it a lot. Because it's like more of that natural sound, and building like a sick library of that I think would be like some next level shit, honestly.
That would be cool.
On some like right below level, right below that level of shit.
People have kind of came up like that.
Oh, 100%. There's some phenomenal like sample artists that, or like, yeah, I don't know how else to describe them, but like artists that make samples.
Yeah.
That are, you know, like you said, make a living off that. But what I was like, one thing that I was saying with like the MIDI thing is because like with like every kind of like instrumental I've made, I've put into like it's like this big database that I go through and reuse and repurpose sometimes into like different ways, and I treat that as like a personal sample bank of like stuff that I've made, and then I can go and reuse and then like start to make, and it's like original samples to an extent, like because it's like stuff that I've made. It's just I didn't record it like fully with that live, but like I'll use
that sequence of notes is your sample.
That sequence of notes is my sample, using the sound that I use with like the MIDI.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then like that mixture of it is the sample that I utilize as like the sample in a certain sense. And I've thought a lot about going through, and honestly the thing that holds me back from it at this point, from what I'm about to say, is just time and effort, because it's going to be a lot of fucking time and effort to do what I want to do, because I just have so many different files to do this through, is to go in and like solo out the tracks, like certain tracks, like the drums,
like solo the parts from them and then like separate them on their own.
Like literally like go do stems, and like beyond just stemming them out, like creating like just the sample sections of like, all right, this is like the 4-bar loop, or like the 8-bar loop, or like
the one note,
you know what I mean? Like there's
it's
so
like
many,
all the stems, it's like every stem of it.
There's so many different possibilities to it that's like I've given it thought of like I could go through and do it. And there's a couple songs where if like I really like say I really like the drums from it, or I really like the MIDI progression, or even sometimes because I'll play the one thing I would say I have been sampling a lot and like saving like samples of is my bass guitar, because I got a bass and like I'll just fuck around on that. Like,
were we hearing some of that bass on the intro?
Yeah.
That was nice. I like that. Is that the same bass?
Yes, it is the same bass.
That was cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was digging that.
You played that in Monterey.
And we did.
Yeah, I was liking that. Yeah, man, you're getting really good with like, because that's MIDI, right?
The bass. The bass was.
The bass is real.
Bass is real.
Oh,
Bass is like
Yeah, I remember you brought it.
Yeah.
Even more on it.
Oh yeah. No, because the bass I got, because I just, it's fun to play. But like I feel like I do two things. Like I like to freestyle a lot, and I usually either use the bass or I use the piano, mostly. But the piano that I've been using is my MIDI piano, because it's just like in my studio. Like you've seen my.
I'm the same. Yeah.
The other one is it's nice, but it's down here. Like,
yeah. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. I've thought about bringing like a mic and putting a mic down
some
here.
Kind of portable recording device of some sort.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. You know, like I could definitely get like a thing, but then there's also like, you've seen the room that it's in. It's in a big old chamber room, so it's gonna like you'll get like that natural reverb in there.
Yeah,
and
that's nice.
Which like so there's I definitely want to do something with it, but I mean I don't know.
Well, if you ever get in that sample game, man, you got to get a whole new machine and a whole I think a whole nother external hard drive.
Yeah,
And that's gonna have to. It's gonna be. That's their independent of anything else you're doing. I think it's almost like paralysis by analysis. There's just so much to think about.
One of our friends, he was telling us about the SP404 for that, because he was saying you could also save your samples onto it and stuff too, because it has like a memory card and it's a machine too. And I always thought that was interesting about that, where I was like, oh, it does have its like memory bank, so you could like then use it specifically to like chop samples up.
Yeah, and I will say that it was funny because I was thinking back to I was having like an Ableton conversation with someone. I don't know, it might have been on the pod, it might not have been, but we were talking about using Simpler on it, which is the sampler.
Not familiar with that.
And it's, I think on Logic it'd be the equivalent of whatever I can't remember what it's called, but it's like whatever they use as their sampler. Just like where you can use the MIDI keyboard to put in sounds into the keyboard, right?
Okay.
That's the best thing. I love that in Ableton and in that.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was talking about with the records. Like, I want to figure out how to sample parts of records into that.
Isolate a part.
I've been collecting them to do that, because I'm going to learn how to do that.
Oh, I could show you for sure. The process isn't a hard process. It's just time consuming into the thing. Like, and I was realizing, because I was I was having the conversation with them as far as to like my process into Ableton and why I don't explore Simpler too much. And I didn't think about it too much at the time, but I was thinking about it a lot more recently. And I think it was a large part of it is because like in using Simpler, you have to set it up. You know what I mean? Like, you have to go through and assign the different like buttons. Be like, all right, this one is gonna be this one. This one's gonna be this one.
100%. That makes 100% sense in that show, like the show Rhythm Roulette. Why it's like they get the record and then it's like that record they're taking all sounds from, because you just got to take all the stuff from that shit and put it into each one of those. You can't do like a bunch of them at a different time. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
it's just like
it takes time to even put everything from that one into all of these different ones, and then it's like, all right, make a beat with that, like, because that took a lot of time, like.
Kind of, and you're limited to the amount of spaces you have there to an extent, and like there's like with it's just one of those that process of it is like one of those things where like, if you have, like you said, you're collecting records with the intention to sample, and I think that's the right way to approach it with it. And like maybe the reason why I haven't approached it with it is because I feel like I've don't often find myself like with an idea that I want to get across and then go into it. Like, it's more like me just sitting down. Whenever I do like make music, I feel like more often than not, it's me sitting down and trying to just catch a wave or
catch lightning in a bottle.
Trying to, but it's sometimes like, you know, it might be trash, it might not be, but certain moments are like, it's just kind of, but I feel like I don't often go in with like a full plan. There's been a couple times where I've been inspired, and it's funny because when I think about it, I'm thinking about it, and the times I've been inspired to are times off of like samples. Like, remember I showed you like 2 songs, which I actually made at the Marriott on some funny shit. On one day that I had brought my
in the back.
I brought my like,
dodging Monica.
Best part about working nights was low key that I was just like the only one that would work there. So like it was
kind of the Lone Ranger back there.
Exactly.
That's true.
Like, it was.
We miss you, by the way.
I miss you guys too, man. It was a great time there for sure. I mean, I had to move on to some other things, but it was after. I do miss you guys because you guys are some dope people.
But those nights were good. You'd be back there mixing drinks, going back there doing samples or what?
Yeah, man. Like, cause sometimes, like, especially like when COVID hit, like, it got like stupid slow.
I used to come through to your job too a few times. I hadn't been there as much as my other friends to visit you, but like towards the end, I remember I came a few more times. Yeah. That was good times, man. That was like, I feel like that spot was the spot I could come through, and you're like, cause there's not a lot of cool places to get a drink here. I feel like that was like the place I feel like I actually just be like, talk to Mauricio.
It's
like,
kind of,
you know what I mean? Cause it wasn't like
hidden spot.
You know, because it didn't have like a lot of people, but I feel like there's places out here that don't have a lot of people that are just like, it's weird. They don't have a lot of people. Yeah. That was like, it felt like it wasn't supposed to be a lot of people. You know, like, I feel like correct. Like,
No, it was definitely a vibe. But in that vibe was like, because there was not a lot of people in certain moments, like I would be able to watch movies. Yeah. And so like, I would have the TVs playing right behind me, and I would just sit there and just kind of chill and see what's good, and then I was watching, I remember John Wick 2. And I saw this line in there that I was like, oh, that's so inspiring. And I literally had to go to the back. I like YouTubed it to find it. Like, I had to pull like the sample and shit to like, I was like looking for that scene to get like that sound. But then from there, I went through and like I added that sound and I built the song off of that sound. And so like that was one of the times that I can like recall like building
having
it
a
with
plan.
intention.
Yeah, had some intention. Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I didn't have like a full like, all right, I'm gonna have like this planned out and then attacking it. But I want to talk to you a little bit on that, because I know that part of like the orchestration is having a little bit more of like planned out what you want to attack when you want to write it. You know?
That's funny you talk about doing stuff at the Marriott, because I do the same thing. Even though I don't have like staff paper, I might have staff paper. I might just have like a regular piece of paper. But what I'll do is I'll start saying V1, V2, viola, cello. Okay, so maybe a contrabass, which is like the string section, and I'll just kind of like maybe start writing in some dynamic information on what I want to do with that section, and then I'll have like some notes for like maybe when the horns might come in. So a lot of that stuff, there's a lot of intention of like when, because you want to have a impact too. And with just instrumental music, when those instruments are coming in, they're going to carry more impact. You know, like when the drums come in, you don't want to have the drums the whole time. They need to come in at a specific part. So I've got piles of papers that I've just been like writing little, like, you know, I'll have maybe like a title idea and then all these little sketches. Then I go into the program and then I start transferring that into notation. And then the dynamics, a whole nother element of the dynamics start taking place. So yeah, and then sometimes, you know, it's not coming together, but something else might come through. And for me, if I'm hearing like maybe like a loop of a string arrangement, then now I'm hearing woodwinds, now I'm hearing horns, and maybe I'm hearing a harp. Who knows? That's the way I kind of work with the orchestration part. Yeah, there's definitely needs to be a plan, but just like painting a picture, sometimes you might just have a little cell. And that's something that you'll hear a lot about in orchestration classes, is how to extrapolate out of just a small little cell of notes. Maybe you have like a 4-note sequence, and like the greats like a John Williams could, like, those 4 notes might be super thematic, and he's pulled this whole orchestration, like something like Jurassic Park. You know, so that's another technique that some of those guys work with, and it's a good exercise.
I like how you described it as like the elements of a story, though. Like, you know, because I feel like sometimes in writing, like, that's like the major parts, like just saying like this part, if you're gonna think about different parts of them, like organizing which one has to come where in the scope of it, being like, this is the bridge, this is the like, I feel like that comes into play in all music, but in your music is like at the forefront.
Well, hopefully one day I get to work with like a big film, like that's a goal. And how that process is going to happen, you know, that's why I'm doing the Parma stuff, to like get like the body of work of like the real orchestral music. So when that time comes, when I get a director, say, hey, check out this catalog. I know they're like just, you know, single shot pieces of music, but if you give me the cue direction, we'll have to get the screen in front of me and the orchestra maybe in the room. If you've ever seen like those clips on YouTube, like John Williams, where they've got like the big Star Wars screen and the orchestra is in the back and he's maybe up in front conducting, and the ticker is going, and that's when they're kind of spotting it, but they may have already done that previously. That's where it gets tricky. I'm like, you know, when does music actually come in, you know, and trying to line that all up. That's going to be so that's going to be down the road, and something I'm going to have to think about. But
curious to know any film scores that you were like personally inspired by, that you really like put up there in your top. Because I feel like you're probably hearing them a different way, where you're like, this is like the GOAT ones. Like,
well, I'm an 80s kid, you know, 80s 90s kid, so my earliest memories are Star Wars.
Got you. Like, you know, that was like, and that did something to you, being somebody that was into that
totally
stuff.
Like, you know, figuring out who John Williams was, and going, wow, man, that guy's like a living legend, and watching him work is so natural. He's like a wizard. So yeah, all his movies, of course, which are really a lot of our movies.
Like, imagine like what happens when he walks in the stew. Like, you know, like with the other people, like it's like That's like the
Yeah.
guy. Like
That'd be
he.
crazy, honestly.
There's another guy named Jerry Goldsmith who I'm a big fan of too, and he's kind of a contemporary. He did the theme for Star Trek, but he's done almost every single film, man, you could think of. Look him up. Total Recall. He did the first score for that film. I don't know if you guys remember the original Total Recall.
I don't think I've seen the original.
I've seen Total Recall.
Yeah. You know, that period of the 90s where it's
Definitely think
action
older
music,
movies, like the music, obviously they used to really go crazy with those like soundtracks.
the sci-fi stuff.
I was literally just about to ask you about that, because like it seems like, in thinking about it, a lot of newer movies nowadays use a soundtrack instead of like
an actual orchestra playing. Like you're right, there's only a few that do it, and they really kind of showcase it when they do. Almost
Exactly.
it's like, yeah, we did this.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation, but I'm starting to hear the difference. I always thought maybe I couldn't. You know, with the release of this record, like this thing sounds like scope-wise, maybe it's just the mixing and the engineering, they're just another level. It sounded so big.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like I could have never ever have achieved that on a DAW. I'm not saying others can't, but I know I couldn't. So I'm starting to hear the detail of the real thing versus the MIDI.
In films, I'm seeing it too.
I wasn't able, like it was growing. Now I totally can. So when there's a budget and you're looking for that grand scope, you got to get the real thing.
I feel like I've seen a few movies like that, though. Now I'm thinking, like, while there's as many, though, like, some of the bigger ones still do kind of, like, stick to, like, they get their grandness across.
Like Avengers.
Like,
Avengers needs the grandness, right?
Right. They still kind of hit it off by using those same things, some of them.
what I was trying to get at is, like, the difference between, like, because I agree with that for sure. You can feel, like, it feels more powerful, and you feel more emotion in, like, the live instrumentation. But what I was getting at more so was like the comparison of like soundtracks versus like scores.
Okay, gotcha.
So like, because I feel like a lot of like Avengers is like an example that I feel like still uses a score, and that's actually part of like why they have such good music is, and they have like iconic music to it, is because they have a score. They created that like iconic score to it, you know what I mean?
Personalized to the film. Yeah.
But then like I feel like there's a big trend in like a lot of movies now where they're just kind of taking popular songs and using that as like the soundtrack and not so much relying on like an original score.
For example, you know? But weird part is in Black Panther where they used both, but they did exactly what you're saying.
Because
that's what confused me. I was like, they did both of those things where they did use one, and then, but the one that they built though, I would classify as what you're saying, because they only used like one song, and I remember I was like, that was my biggest gripe. Like I was waiting to hear any of it in the movie, like as a score, and it was like you said, it was literally just like a soundtrack. Like whatever they did use of the song, it was like a snippet of it, but they still did like, or like, you know what I'm saying, like that's why it was a snippet, because they still, for like the cinematic parts, they still used like bands and other stuff. But I was looking at it like, because they crafted it, I was kind of looking for that, but then I guess it was like they did both, so I was like, all right, this is just a soundtrack and then this is separate.
I think in that case it would, a big part of the confusion, especially for me as well, because I was in the same boat where I was just kind of upset, where I was like, well, why wasn't this more incorporated? Was because I think that one was an album inspired by the movie, and it was something kind of taken in their own direction that they just so happened to like. It was inspired by the movie, but they still were working concurrently so that they used pieces of it, but it wasn't like the official soundtrack of the movie, like how some is like the stuff that was directly used in the film, like top to bottom.
Damn, soundtracks used to be busting though. I forgot about soundtracks.
They used to have some pretty kill ones, bro.
I'm trying to think. There was a film called Garden State. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that.
I haven't seen.
Zach Braff, he was in Scrubs, so he made this like coming of age film called Garden State, early 2000s, and he compiled a soundtrack of like songs by other artists, like who was in there, like Iron and Wine and Coldplay and Postal Service, and it won a Grammy. How much of a score was actually written? I don't think much. There might have been a little incidental music, but he's like kind of like his playlist, if you will, and he turned that into the soundtrack for the film, won a Grammy. and I guess it's just where the direction of the story.
Movie. Yeah, it worked in the
it
movie.
It worked in the movie, and you should go see it. It's with,
so you think maybe that's like a product of like the films themselves, like what type of film it is?
I think that's a part of it. Is like, I think this is one of those things where, like we were talking about earlier, where music, the music makes a good portion of the film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's matching the story, it goes well. So there's like certain, and I can't deny this, that there's certain movies that wouldn't be the same if it had like a full original score as opposed to using like the songs that it did. There's many movies that the songs that they used were so pivotal and important to the film and using them that like almost using any other song or any other like sound effect wouldn't have been right. So I get it, and like I'm not knocking it in
like,
that sense because
like the Jaws, dun, dun, dun.
But
John Williams.
But that's an original score though. That's
I got you. Like you mean like in the opposite sense, like for a soundtrack that wouldn't be right.
Exactly.
Okay.
But in both cases, like it I think it holds true in all cases. It's just like whatever sound fits best for the situation, I feel like should be used. But I feel like within that though, we're getting to this point where like it seems that sometimes it doesn't seem like that's like it's being used as like a go-to. Maybe it's just a trend, you know what I mean? And it's like trending with like the way movies go as a whole, but like it seems that they're a little bit more of like a reliance on using like popular songs, whether it be as a form of nostalgia, as a form of like whatever, to kind of set the tone and set the pace for the music part of the movie.
I think you hit on the money with the nostalgia factor, because there's certain, like you said, there's a certain nostalgia factor in even that, like where they did that before and it was real successful. So people, I feel like, are also trying to bring that back too.
Here's another one, the title song, like Titanic, where they get like Celine Dion.
I remember learning on piano. That was like the original teach you on piano song.
What was the name of that song? My Heart Will Go On.
Forever. Yeah.
So that movie had a title song, and that was like a big thing. For
it's a lot of nostalgia factors.
So there's trends,
where people are like looking
trends.
back at like a lot of the stuff they pulled off with it at that time, and it is kind of that. Like there was an era where they were pulling off a lot of stuff that had to do with like, Waiting to Exhale was like a big one. I remember that was like it was like a chick flick, but it was like the soundtrack was like all the greatest like R&B hits of the time. Like Whitney Houston was on the soundtrack.
Mary J. Blige or something, right?
Like it was the 80s, but it was just like at that time, I feel like they're kind of trying to like, it's like a little nostalgia factor to do that style of thing for me.
I feel like now I get it in the nostalgia factor because they're trying to like do a timepiece, setting it into like that zone, so they wanted to send it back to then. But in those cases that you guys outlined, those were songs that were made, from my understanding, with the intention of being for that film.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And like, because I was also going to talk about like, I remember one that I think was like Eye of the Tiger. I think was
Rocky.
For Rocky. I think that was one that was made for the film.
Right.
And like just
goated song.
I want to say the name of that group was Survivor. I'm not 100%, but I think it's Survivor, Eye of the Tiger.
I think I could be.
You're probably
those
right.
are great movie songs though.
but you know, those
Tiger,
were like
man.
ill songs that were made for the movie, and they got the point across of the movie, and like look what how great of a song they were, and like what it came to be. But I feel like now what I'm saying is that we're not seeing too much of that anymore. We're not seeing too many songs.
It's not really holding to the same standard, and if you will.
Yeah,
That's what I mean.
That's what I was just.
I get you mean, like.
And what costs more, getting the license to have that song in your film, or getting the budget to record your own music?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's the other question.
I was gonna say analytics come into it too, because
more
back
expensive?
then you wasn't looking at all the analytics. Right now they could just compare it numbers wise easy. Like who's an artist, like that's how, like, you know, they can really just look at it like Cardi B wants a song in a movie, like, you know what I mean. Like back then it was probably more so of like they were taking chances with these movies, not so much chances, but like whatever, like their agent, you know what I'm saying, was saying, it was like, this guy's a good, you know, I like his films, I want to write a song. That group Journey's like, I want to write a song, I like this movie Rocky. Like I feel like now it's a lot more just like, well, what is the best move, and that's why you're seeing a lot of that.
Sad. Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Yeah.
But one thing I was curious, what I was gonna say, one time I had a class and I had to think of kind of like when I was asking you that question about what would be my favorite like scores and stuff like that, and I had to write it was a music class in my freshman year, and I had to write like an essay, and it was on like like classical music. So I had to learn the history of that, and I remember that was like my final essay. And then one of my movies that I really liked at the time was Eyes Wide Shut. And then that was like my favorite. Like I immediately thought of like the scene, like when they go into like the room and
Tom
like,
Cruise and Nicole Kidman, right?
Yeah, and it was
one.
just like, I don't know, like days when they presented like what you kind of had to be like, what was you were gonna write it all about, like how this was so perfect for the scene. Like that was like the theme, and that was the one that just I remember the music and everything just hitting like together on point. Like the moment like they just like amplified it every time, like it just got more scarier. Like when he took off his mask and they were just like I was like no.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's pretty cool.
But yeah, that was definitely my favorite one for sure. Cool. I was just like, the music on that movie was just on point. Like every moment just that was supposed to make you feel suspenseful, like they just really took it up to the next notch. Like
I low-key felt that way with Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That one was just one. Maybe it's also part of like nostalgic, but like I felt like when I was watching that, the score always just kind of kicked in when it needed to, like just kind of let like
all the characters' themes,
exactly.
like what the Hedwig's theme, the Owl's theme. Yeah, that's
especially when they're
iconic.
like walking other places. I feel like they used to really get down. Like in the travel between places, they would be like the hardest flute
because it's airy and that's what makes sense for like air flight.
Yeah. Oh man,
absolutely.
But what kind of so I guess we talked about what inspires, but what about now? What kind of stories or films are you trying to like score? What's your style that you prefer?
That's a good question. If I had a chance to score a film, I want to do something with a more serious tone. So I'm thinking maybe just like a stripped down piano, maybe light sound design, very minimal. I'm doing these big orchestral stuff, which is cool, and I want to eventually do more of that. But I want to get like into like I don't know, maybe it's a drama, serious tone drama with like a piano score, maybe light strings and some light sound design. I think that would be an awesome opportunity to just kind of showcase what else I can do on another side of the spectrum. That's some of the kind of films. There's this film called This Is England, and it was about England in the 80s, like after the Falklands War, and this group of skinheads, like the aggressive skinheads and the skinheads that are just kind of wrapped up in like ska music of the day, and they're like not violent, and how they're coming together in 80s England, and they just have like this score that's just really piano and strings that's super powerful. I'd like to do something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be cool, and it'd be easy to do too. Like I could do that on a DAW. We'd have to be working with the reverb a certain way, but it could be done.
One film you guys reminded me of that I liked recently, a new one that I feel like they emphasized the idea of their score, was the Illegal Civ movie. It's like a skating company, and they put out a movie, and it was on, and they got like cool actors acting it. What's that one guy's name? I forget him. He was in Wedding Crashers with Owen Wilson, but the other guy, Vince Vaughn.
Oh, Vince Vaughn.
Yeah. He was playing like the dad and all that stuff. But the interesting part about the soundtrack was that I feel like the score was all like 50s music, and I feel like it related to the sample conversation you were having. Like it felt scorish, but it felt scorish because it was music when they used a lot of instruments. Like they only used
big
like
band.
Yeah, like singers from like back in that era, like because they were it was supposed to be like North Hollywood back in the day, but also like dystopian, where certain stuff was not like, you know what I mean? Like certain stuff wasn't accurate exactly, like like it was made up friend groups like in Greece, kind of like that.
What was the name of
It's called North Hollywood.
North Hollywood.
Yeah,
check that out.
Yeah, but that was the cool thing I remember about the score about it, was like you said, like slow, but then also like sample based in the tip, where it was like, but the only songs they used were like older songs for that reason. So it was weird to me how like they kind of got that effect across, but it was also a newer movie. Like,
they could have just wrote the music and had it in that era.
That's what I was thinking. Like, what if they did
all
do
sample? It's definitely doable.
They definitely have the kind of connections for sure.
Just that for me, that sounds like a lot of brass.
right?
Is there a lot of brass in it?
They would cut it out at times,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was definitely like a lot of what do they call that music? Like I feel like it sounds like
Swing?
the music
Swing music.
swing,
Yeah.
a lot of swing. That's
Yeah.
the word for it.
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't think of it in my head. Like I just think of I was
From,
kept thinking of the
40s,
outfits
from the 40s, like World War II era.
Yeah. And they're known for putting that style of music in like their skating videos and stuff. And I always thought about like
that's
the
cool.
art in that, like of putting like that music with like mellow stuff, like in movies. Going to the park.
What's your guys' thoughts on when people do it like opposite wise? You know, when because there's like music that matches it, but then there's
Like somebody murdering somebody to like a whistling song. Like in a
the
movie.
juxtaposition,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it doesn't work. I kind of like that.
Yeah, right. It's alright.
I think there's art in that sometimes. If it's too matched up, you know, it's a good presentation, but that stuff that I kind of think adds to maybe it being tense or uneven, I think just might add to
Yeah.
whatever the director's trying to get across. So I'm all about it. I sometimes would prefer that.
Right? There
Yeah.
are some scenes that even hit more better, I guess, in a certain, like
Yeah.
they're more potently because just the juxtaposition. Like it's just like you're hearing
You're a little
this.
unhinged, and you're like, okay, I'm very unsettled because it's not working. That could just add to the scene.
Have you guys ever like seen one of like those like clips where they like do like the same scene but with different music on top of it?
Mm-mm.
I'm trying to remember, but I don't think so. I think at the most I've seen is like an alternate. I've seen a couple alternate endings of films, but I don't really remember if they changed the music up.
It's an interesting concept, man. Like, because how we're talking about right now, like the vibe that it gets, either it's like matching with it or even it's juxtaposed with it where it's matching that. But like, there's either certain.
Wow, but now I actually get exactly what you're talking about, because I have had that similar experience, but sometimes I watch videos on YouTube and I'll have my headphones on and it'll be on mute. And the other day I stumbled upon like there's these visually stimulating videos, like they'll have sons where someone's building a house over the past 8 hours, but it was these people taking down a wasp hive. And I was listening to some music though, and it was different, you know what I mean, than like what was going on, but that on mute with that, like I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
like something about it fit, if you will,
Sets the
because it
idea.
was like sped up, like it was like a time lapse type of thing, so it wasn't like, you know what I mean, but it was like on point, like certain movements and things they were doing was hitting at the same time as
It's crazy.
the music, even though it wasn't like scored to it, if you will.
That's an art form in of itself. I met this editor not too long ago, and he works for the Hallmark Channel. He does trailers for Hallmark, and I was talking about like his process and how he picks music and how he gets it synced up to scenes, and yeah, it's time consuming, and it's its own art. It's because it's got a rhythm to it. So
It's
Yeah.
crazy seeing with like when that rhythm just naturally lines up.
Yeah.
In the certain
and the
instances.
cut scenes are landing with the changes. Yeah.
I remember back when I was in New York, there was one of my friends' apartments. They would have like a projector, and they were really into putting certain songs on and then certain videos on at the same time because they knew they were the same BPM,
Oh, that's it.
and so that they would just kind of like play within them because you knew since it's like the same like BPM that it'll kind of match music video wise.
Right.
And so it was like wild.
Wow, so I get what you're saying, like it's just like a whole different music video, but it's the same BPM, so they're just like
Exactly.
seeing them move to the same
You
beat.
guys have dabbled in that too, right? With like some of the videos you've done. Haven't you shot a couple music videos?
I see what you're saying, like
Yeah.
on placing the video with the audio, like
Oh,
or
yeah.
you're like connecting it up. Yeah.
That for sure, yeah. This is what I was saying, more so of like taking like a video of like someone, like another music video, having that one on mute, and then putting like another song
Another
on.
song.
We should try that. We should try to find a song that's the same BPM of a music video we already have out and then put it to it
Let's
and
find,
see how it'll look.
if any artists out there have like
Some
a
ideas?
song with the same BPM, hit us up. We'll do a little switcheroo.
Yeah, or you can do like with our own, I'm saying like with another song we have that's the same BPM of like another of the song. That's what I'm saying. Like imagine hearing a spin on your song on the music video, but like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like the
Yeah.
same, like it's like a remix. What do you think of like? This is a random question, but I've seen this like sped up music lately. I've been hearing that too. I've been seeing it's like a new thing, like where there'll be songs, and then they'll like speed or slow down. They've always had like slowed down versions I've
Right.
seen, but now I'm seeing like the speed up.
I don't know. know. Does it work?
I mean, I feel like it's just like an interesting thing, like where, I mean, some people like it, some people don't, but I feel like it's a product of like TikTok, the internet, different shit. Where
that's
it's
a whole
like
other conversation.
I think that's what's creating it, but I feel like it's like songs that are already songs that are getting like remixed and then repurposed as like.
I don't like the microwave.
Right? It kind of sounds like
that.
it's like a song getting kind of worked into another form of the song.
Yeah, let's eat it when it's out of the oven, right? And how it is, rather than that's a whole nother conversation with me, like the microwaving of stuff, and it just takes all the value out of it for me.
Right?
Yeah. Because as musicians, like our music, I know mine and I know yours. It has value for us, and I don't like seeing it.
I was just saying, like sometimes the repurposing of it kind of like takes something out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like it makes sense. It's like how people say you should get like an air fryer,
Air fryer egg rolls.
Like so it is like it's like you don't want to just put the leftover pizza back in the microwave. Yeah. Like it's really good. Like
out of the box, right?
Yeah. Like, you should definitely keep it, same tact.
Oh man.
Anything you want to get into before you get into the life affirmation segment?
I think
I haven't hit a lot of these today.
I love myself way more than I love you.
There's usually like really, serious ones.
I'm biting a pill and it's burning my quad.
But
is that like your bumpers?
Yeah, these are like little like I don't know. We hit them for like moments in the pod when there's like stuff people say to relate to them. But no, it's been.
So this is all like programmed into. What are you working on nowadays?
Ableton.
So you've totally converted. No more Pro Tools.
No more Pro Tools. Not unless I need to. Like I was at the studio the other day, and I had to use it for a little bit, and it was crazy because I haven't used it in so long that I was like.
No shortcuts. You don't know the shortcuts.
I don't remember shortcuts. I know how to get to I know where to find shit, but the hotkeys.
Hotkeys.
And besides the zoom in and zoom out.
Oh man. Yeah, I haven't used it at all either. Like me, I'm full Logic. Yeah. So Pro Tools was always just a school thing.
Yeah. You got good with it though, with the hotkeys at the point in time. Like you were like out here just doing it, like mixing everything right in there.
Well, I could still do like.
I just remember you using Pro Tools like as your main thing at a point in time, like.
Because I started on that one. I learned on it. I mean, when we first met, we were learning together, like on Pro Tools. We were.
Like you were in deep with it. Like when we were making that album, like that was like the only thing.
Yeah, I refused to go to. I didn't like Logic enough to like switch over at the time, and like Ableton scared me. Like I
you weren't even like side thinking about it. Like
nah, I was so good. I was so good on Ableton because every time the thing was when I saw Ableton, I always saw it when I first saw it. I'd always see it with like the fucking launch pad. You know what I mean? Like that 64 button, like the
controller?
The pad.
Oh, like the other part.
Yeah. And so like I didn't even really have much of a concept of prior to when a DAW, right?
Right.
And so then once I saw the DAWs and like got introduced to like Pro Tools and Logic, I would see Ableton. I'm like, it just seems like there's a lot going on, man. Like I just don't need. There's just a lot on the screen, and like I didn't like it. Like,
and the whole menu's on the right-hand side of the screen. What's going on with that? Yeah.
But like, eventually, when I switched to the other school, and they forced me to learn it for one of my classes.
The recording school in LA.
Yeah.
Right.
And when I'm actually really, really glad that they did, because as a result from that class, I realized like the capabilities of Ableton. And I was like, okay, it's just a matter of getting familiar with it, because it seemed overwhelming, because when you look at it, it's just, like I said, it's just all on the screen. It doesn't have like a very like with Logic, it has like a much nicer UI. You know what I mean? When you look at it, it's got like.
I always use this word, intuitive.
It does feel, it's a lot more intuitive, without a doubt. It's like you can kind of get shit going like this on Logic. And then because I went Pro Tools and I went to Logic for a little bit when I was also at LA Film School, like learning how to use Logic and like when I got into that a little bit more, I was like, I liked Logic because Logic honestly has like a lot of really good features. All of them have great features. They're all great DAWs, and they all get the job done. They all have their own little pros and cons for each that, like, I can understand why anybody would pick one over the other. For me, what ended up being with Ableton was just like, after a certain point, it just seemed, it's like stripped down. There's a lot in your face, but it's also very stripped back. So it's also in the sense where like, there's not a lot of extra flashiness to it, but it's so that they can kind of cram in all this other stuff. So once you kind of get used to like maneuvering within it, it's like kind of just like, okay, I need to do something easy. Just boom, click this or hit this, and then like it just all seems there. And so like that combined with the sampling capabilities at the time, because like now like each of the DAWs has, you know, they've updated throughout the years. Like seeing the progression of all these DAWs has been really interesting as well. Like but they've eventually kind of like started to catch up with each other, and like in certain aspects of like, oh, what was once like a proprietary thing for you is now not really so much. So like we have our version of it. So it's like there's very few things that I feel like any of the DAWs have over the other. I will say one thing, shout out to Logic, because I fucking love that thing, is their drummer track.
Yeah.
That thing is amazing.
I'm working on stuff like I was talking about, the house and trance and the projects that I'm doing in my Logic class where it's all drummer track sessions.
That thing is insane.
It's cool, right?
That is some next level shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I might have talked to you about it, a little about it, Wesley, but like that AI drummer.
You could have Kyle, he's a rocker.
Yeah.
You could have Maurice, he's like more like, I don't know, hip hop, you know.
I definitely mess with it on my thing too, like where it's been like you can kind of just set it up, like you set up all the rhythms they're gonna do, just boom, 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 like
exactly.
it shows you,
and you can like it's dope because like it uses live drum kits, from my understanding, or like the different styles of drum kits as like their MIDI bank, whatever, for it. And then on top of that, it has like so much levels of like customization that I was like, damn, that thing is sick.
That's
I haven't seen that in any of the other two that I mentioned, and that's one thing that if they want to get their shit together and put them on there, like Ableton, you need to get that. But
that's crazy timing. I just finished a project going over exactly what you're talking about.
The drummer.
And yeah, the different customizations you could use. Like, okay, we'll get the snares more involved in this next measure than we did have the hi-hats. And yeah, it's pretty cool. You speed up the rhythms or make them more complex, make them more simple. Yeah, that's cool.
No, I love that thing. I was like, that thing alone almost makes me...
I've got one question kind of added on Ableton and like the plugins.
Yeah.
That's pretty smooth across the board, you'd say, as well?
Yeah. Plugins, actually, funny enough, it works smoother than my plugins. Like, the plugins I have work for Ableton, and they seem to not work for Pro Tools or Logic. At least some of them. There's certain ones that do, like, kind of cross over and work well with it. But there's like a couple specific ones.
It's like no hiccups. It's pretty smooth.
Yeah. That, or at least with Ableton. Ableton, I haven't ran into any of them that tell me like isn't compatible with this. But I've had, for whatever fucking reason, on like Logic or Pro Tools, when I log into some of them, it'll tell me that like the license isn't there for it. I'm like, that ain't a problem in Ableton, so I don't know. I don't know.
Moving on, man.
Exactly. So I mean, to a certain extent, like, it's just, like I said, they're all great, and I think they all have their own little thing, and I can understand why anybody would pick any one of them. Even, I just described these three.
That's a big factor right there, though, what you described. Like, even when I was in the studio with my other friend, and he has FL, like, we were going back and forth between there and then, like, Pro Tools, but then, like you said, like, sometimes like he knew how to use them, but then we were like, well, I wouldn't have all my plugins though if we went over here, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, we don't need them all for this, so we could use it. But then if we didn't need them all for something else, it was just kind of like more beneficial to just use it in that sense, because you were able to use everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you spend time having a bunch of stuff on there, now you're like, well, you want to be able to use everything.
Exactly. One last thing I wanted to touch on before we get onto life affirmations. I don't know how deep we really were able to touch on like the Parma recordings. Like once you actually got to, we talked about like your end of kind of making it, but then we didn't talk too much about like the next step from there into like.
Oh, so like their production.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So
And how that kind of comes into this.
wow. So you're right. Well, the pieces that I'm on, the label that I'm on, it's more the compilations, like the contemporary compositions. So there's more than one composer. It's a lot of moving parts. So we're all kind of going through it at once. The executive producer and the CEO of the company, Bob Lord, he's in charge of everything. So he's handpicking the music, and he's got his A&R reps that are feeding him the music, and they're putting it on like themes, like Legends in Light. This particular one has kind of like a theme about like the vastness of the sea and the world, the forces of nature, if you will. So there's a lot of hands in the cookie jar. But you want to know more about the production of the music? Is that?
I was talking about once you send it off and like the actual process of having it like a live recording, because you're the only person I've honestly have met that has ever had their song like recorded by a full orchestra, which is like super sick. Like,
yeah, it's a trip. I know. Well, let's go how like Eurus 2.0 was a track that, or the piece of music I got signed. So found it on Facebook.
Oh, so you had a song out that they discovered of yours previously before you got signed?
Well, yeah. So I found them on Facebook. They were on my feed.
Oh, you found them first?
Yes.
Got you.
Well, I'll give you the whole beginning of it. It started in orchestration class at COC. That was the project, was to write a piece for the orchestra. His name was Greg Hosharian, great teacher at COC, Cal Arts guy. And so that was your final, write a piece for the orchestra. This was pre-pandemic. We were going to have the orchestra at COC perform it at the PAC, the Performing Arts Center. So that was the thing. He's like, write a piece. We're going to get them to perform it. Pandemic happened, so that was scratched. We all moved to Zoom, and this was like, it all lined up perfectly. Moved to Zoom, and he was like, okay, we're just going to mock it up. We're going to learn how to mock up this music, because that's what the pros do anyways before he could even get it to get approved by an orchestra to get recorded for real. So I was like, all right, this sounds kind of fun. I love samples. Like, this is gonna be great. I'm ready to do this already. So each kid had his score, mocked it up, yada, yada, yada. My teacher was like, hey man, this piece of music's pretty great. You should try and think about getting it produced for real. So that's the ideas in my head. So I subscribe to a lot of sample libraries and recording companies, etc. And that's on my feed now for Facebook. So it was called a call for scores, and this company, Parma Recordings, was looking for unpublished modern contemporary music. We need a score, we need a mock-up. So I sent them both, and like within a day or two, I had a rep got back to me and said, wow, we really like this piece of music. We see it, we see the vision, we want to produce it for real. So okay, what does that entail? They sent me a contract. And the way they work is they want to give the artist their music. So as the artist, you fund the project. So I funded the whole thing. They put me on a payment plan. So I own, not only intellectually, I own that piece of music. For 5 years, I own like 60% of the recording, but eventually I'll own 100% of the master recording. So I'll like own the music. So if it happens to get somewhere, like I'll be able to collect on it. So once it was signed and we had the payment installation figured out, I got in touch with another part of the company, which I send the scores to. So I had to like separate the scores from the different sections and send those off one by one. And that person's job was to pretty much make sure everything's like notated correctly. And they're like analyzing this because now when they're going to put it in front of an orchestra, it all needs to line up when they're all playing it together, right? So now they have their production team, and then I was sent a email saying, hey, our recording date is April 6, 2021, by the Brno Philharmonic. Again, it was going to be in Germany, but the pandemic kind of threw things off. So pretty much we went into that Zoom meeting, and I really didn't have to do much. Their whole production team took care of everything for me. It was the only thing I really had to say was like, oh, maybe he's a little too fast, or let's bring up that a little bit. So they recorded it, and a couple days later they sent me the edits of all the takes that they had. So we went like 8 measures at a time. Like the whole orchestra would come in 8 measures at a time, and they captured all the audio. Then they pieced together the best bits that were like the most fluid, and you could hear all all the instruments, and we went through 3 rounds of that. And I would say I was like listening to it with like some high-tech headphones, like listening for pops and for cracks. And I would say, hey, had a spreadsheet, like 3 seconds in, you could hear like a scuff, someone's moved in their chair, like let's take that out. There were some other like frequencies I could hear, maybe if we could on the mastering bring that down. And so I had a whole Excel spreadsheet. I would write these notes, send it to the engineer. His name was Lucas, and a couple days later he'd get back to me with another edit, and he made the changes. Now there'd be some other things to change, and on the third one, man, they nailed it. And then they said, okay, this third edit's the best edit, and now we're going to send it to mastering. And then we went through a whole 2 rounds of mastering. And then they said, hey, we're going to send you some CDs, and by the way, they're going to perform it live in Zagreb, Croatia. It's going to be on YouTube, and that kind of took off on its own and gave me some more exposure. So we're just hoping the second one kind of has the same process, and I'm super excited.
I'm back in the building, it's burning my quad.
That's sick.
Definitely sounds like a lot of hard work, bro.
It was a lot of, yeah, man. From August 20 to August 20 until January 22. It's a year and a half, about a year and a half of work. So,
And
There's
you
another
already
one.
signed up for this next
and
one.
now we're signing for the second
Burning
one.
my quad.
Yeah, second one. It's gonna happen in 23 with the.
I think like good projects, and maybe I'm just biased. I feel like good projects just take that long.
Yeah, going back to the microwave thing. It's now microwave.
Right? Yeah, I just think I just wasn't made for that, bro. Like
Yeah.
they just like take like a year sometimes, like more. Like
It's worth it though. It's worth it.
It's true. It needs time to simmer.
Yeah, it needs time to marinate.
I don't think we went into anything thinking it was gonna take that long. They all just ended up taking that long.
Yeah.
You know, just till we felt like it feels good now. I'm like,
So everything is right with it. Exactly.
But one more thing to add, like I didn't really get to be a part of the actual, like I wasn't there in the country during the session and like with the musicians. This second one, I'm hoping I could actually be present, like in the hall with, where I can maybe walk up to the horn player and say, hey man, thank you, that was perfect. Or, meet with the guy on the timpani and say, hey man, can you bring it up a little bit at the certain measure? So that might be something that would be add a whole nother wrinkle to the process. That would be cool, right?
Yeah.
We'll see.
I get more hands on.
Get a little bit more hands on, be in the control room. Because like it was all virtual. I wasn't really in the room. That would be kind of neat to see how they're actually, as an audio guy, to see how that's done. That's what I'm hoping I get to see on the second one.
That's cool.
And in the future.
And that one's gonna be in Germany.
That's also going to be in the Czech Republic.
Czech Republic.
In a city called Ostrava with the Janacek Philharmonic, named after Leos Janacek. He was a famous Czech composer. They're a very contemporary orchestra. They've done a lot of cool recordings, and they're like one of the go-to with Parma.
Right. One thing actually I wanted to talk about before I forget, now that we're on it, is the fact how much bigger it is over there for like live music. It seems like in the European scene.
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing. They're just, I think, more in tune with the classical music, and the art music that's what they kind of call it, the contemporary art music. Mm-hmm. It's more of a thing over there than it is here. Not to say that it's not. There's an audience for it, but I think it's just the level of performer over there. I think the cost of the orchestra is also a factor. So there's a more elements on why we do stuff there, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I think that they're like the best players in the world. Like, I think they're second to none. Of course, like the London Symphony Orchestra or like the LA Philharmonic, those are like the best, but these guys are right at that level too. And you notice like a lot of good players, they kind of like a team, like you would like on it, he's going from the Lakers to the Clippers, like these players, performers, they rotate to different orchestras, as their career goes up. Yeah.
Would you ever want to be part of an orchestra?
Man, I don't like performing. I'm not a big performer, so the composing thing, being the guy behind the scenes,
I feel
that totally fits with my personality. But my dad made a comment. He's like, "Oh man, you could," because there's a piano part in both of these pieces. Mm-hmm. I could play them. I don't think I could play them as well as like classically trained pianists could play them though. Even though I wrote it, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, I could do it, but I'd have to practice like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Writing it and playing it's a whole another game.
It's true.
Right?
It's very, very
Yeah.
true.
So maybe one day. You know, Hans Zimmer had the same thing. He's not a big performer either, and as he got older, you see him performing his pieces live in concert, but I think he had stage fright too, and that's kind of my deal. But one day.
Yeah, we all can get over it one day.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Well, shit, I think we could probably get into the life affirmation section soon. So this part of the show, if Russ wants to break it down.
This is just the part where, where we talk about one thing we look at differently in the past month or year or 2 weeks or, any amount of time really. And I feel like we've had a lot of them over the past week or so. I've been reflecting. So I think I really have to think harder nowadays, about what I look at differently in the past months or years or weeks. But sometimes you don't think that hard because then it'll be bigger life perspective changes, and it's just like as a whole. And I feel like one thing, I don't know, for me has just been I think just shit, I guess this has been the biggest one thing I was thinking about recently, like these life affirmation segments, and like how much kind of the need, because I was talking about this with someone else who gave one of these similar takes on their life affirmation, and I kind of made me think about the need to reflect and the need to like sit down and like talk about shit and like remember what has happened. I feel like sometimes I don't, like, even when I try to dive a little bit into that, I find myself maybe, I don't know, not diving into it as much as I should because I feel like I'll dwell too much. You know what I mean? So I think that's just something I, as of late,
Don't want to live in the past too much, right?
Yeah, that's usually how I go about it, I guess. But I feel like lately I've been thinking like sometimes I gotta like tap back into it because I find myself a little too afraid to live in the past. And sometimes like I've always known those people where I feel like a lot of the answers are always in the past sometimes, like for your future. And a lot of the keys and shit, you be so focused on like what your future's gonna be like. A lot of times when you take those moments to like really study like your past, you just like elevate to the next level of your future.
It's some deep stuff, but it's very true.
Mm-hmm.
You can find so many different answers by looking back to see what the answers for forward are. That's some real shit. I guess one thing recently I've been reflecting a lot on lately is that the importance of like taking care of your stuff. Not just, and this kind of came to me in the sense because I've been looking to sell my car recently, and that's it. I didn't take care of my car, but like going through and like detail cleaning my car myself to trying to like get it like sell worthy. I was like, I could have been a little bit more I could have given a little bit more attention to this. I don't know. Like, it's clean, but it's not like, you know what I mean?
My car's a closet, so I know where you're coming from.
Like, it is, but that into everything else, like, I can always, like, I'm not, like, 100% terrible with it, but I can always give more attention to keeping my shit clean and keeping my shit, like, organized and, like,
maintaining
it, you know what I mean? I feel like that's one
maintenance
thing. Exactly, because it also gets to the point where, and I realize this, where if you let it go for too long, sometimes, like, now to clean that shit, it's gonna take a cool second. Like, you're gonna have to really, like, you know, work at that spot to get off what could have been gotten off with, like, one little wipe here and there is now gonna take, like, a cool 30 wipes, you know what I mean? So it's just like, it was just kind of like on that wave of just reflecting on being more cognizant of, like, taking care of my things and not letting the little dirt and grime build up, because it's one of those things where, like, I feel like for me it very often gets beyond me because it's just not on my mental. It's not something that I give too much attention to for whatever reason, and, like, it'll hit me like inspirations of, like, moments where I'm like, okay, no, I need to make sure everything looks good, but it's rarely in the sense where, like, like on a daily tip or like on a thing where like some people are like really like on this shit about keeping everything like neat and tidy. And I'm not saying I don't know if I need to transition all the way to that zone of it, but like I feel like it's not as bad of a thing as I once thought of it. Like, this is just, that's where my head's been at.
What about you?
I would say enjoying downtime. I think between like school the last couple years and this project and the last project and obviously the day job, it's not like a whole lot of, if there is downtime, I'm doing something else. So it's like making sure I'm just turning the jets down and just relaxing and, you know, staying in the moment and just, you know, looking back and say, oh, I accomplished this and that's awesome. And, you know, I got these future plans, but just kind of just enjoying like the downtime. Like this is awesome. This is like, this downtime for me, you know, cause I'm not working, but it's just like, I'm enjoying it and just enjoying doing more social things. I haven't been real social in the last couple of years because there's always too much to do. So I think moving forward, that's something I'm going to try and have more part of my life. It's just downtime, being more social, and just enjoying the moment.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's really good. Well,
So,
shit, man, thank you for coming.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome, man.
This was a great talk.
Yeah,
It
was great to meet you too, by the way, man. I know I haven't got to
absolutely
meet you today, but it was great to learn about.
Me and this guy used to spend a lot of time with each other. Shoot, man, I'd be 40 hours a week at that place, and you'd probably be there for half.
Yeah.
Hey, for a couple of years, man. So definitely great catching up with you, Mauricio, man. Very cool. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming, man.
Absolutely.
Definitely got to work on another song again.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
can't
for
wait,
helping us
man.
with
I
Dave.
can't wait
Man,
until
that
you guys
was
get number 3 going.
Fuck
and
yeah.
you need some keyboard tracks or some strings, man, you let me know.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in.
We got another one for real.
Mind Tree Radio. Mind Tree Radio.
As time drifts, my mind slips with a wonderful existence. Life and death never mattered to the distant versions of myself that I left the world. It escapes me sometimes on a quest for purpose. Remember once I was obsessed with girls who didn't give a damn about the situation at hand. As long as she simulated reality. Caught up in a web, finally led to fatality. Darkening scenes often extreme. My loved ones cry over broken glass dreams. I start to recall every moment since I was 3. That apartment in Van Nuys, shit, it fit about 3. That window with a tree, preschool in the view. It would calm anxiety to see the kids play tag. All alone in my room, I couldn't feel pain. Now the doctor's on the phone. Too many pills, man. Heavy breathing is all. I start to find some resolve. Lights get dimmer, like I'm climbing up a hill. My wrist starts to get thinner. I guess it's time to rebuild. Falling victim to what some would call untimely demise. No, not I, no, not I. Gather round, gather round. I wonder who shows people I hate, even friends and some foes. Too bad I'm not there. Glad I don't care. I'm dead and reborn. Forever's not fair. Lose yourself now. Tomorrow.